dress, which is a little bit simpler. So if you are a beginner sewer and you don't want to do the ruler loop, then this is the one for you. We're going to go through it very slowly. It is very, very simple to do. And the one thing I'm going to do here is put the hem trim on, because that is different and I want you to see how that works. So I will cut off where it says cut here if you're using the wide hem trim. So I need to reduce the front and the back of my pattern to do this. That's really all I have to do. I'm still going to put the pleats in at the top because I want to show that again to you. So I need to cut my front hem trim and my front piece, and I need to cut my very, very long one for the front. So I've got 3 pieces for the front I need to cut, and I'm going to do the back, and I need the facing for the back and the back piece, and that's basically it, plus my hem trim of course. So I'm ready to cut out. I've chosen my fabric and I've placed it on. So here we've got the fold. That means that those 2 sides which are open, which have the self edge on it, that's the woven edge of the fabric, they lie on top of each other, giving me a fold there. So what I've done here is I've put my front piece on and I swiveled my back piece round so that it fits in like this. If you are making this dress as a total beginner, please choose something where the direction doesn't matter. It is so much easier to do and you save some fabric. I will actually have some left over. Now normally I'd say, oh, you can get a pat quarter or something like really cool to do these facings, but because I am using a white chino in a minute to do my hems on there, because I think that'll look really nice, I don't want it to look like, you know, clownish. It's easily done. So I'm going to cut my facings out of the same material that I've got here. Now actually, incidentally, for this size, it would come out perfectly out of this. But of course I can't put it like that. So what we're going to do is we're cutting these out, and I'm going to just like quickly do that. So you've got a seam in the back. Okay, so you can put this away. Cut from the left. That means that your pattern is on your right. And then you cut around it. That's really very important because you have so much more control than when you do this. You know, you just, if the fabric, if the pattern is on your left, you just don't have the control. So don't do that. What you can do here is, like, if you've got another bit coming, you don't have to cut one piece at a time. Cut this bit. Yeah, so I'm still on my left. Cut to there, swivel this thing round, and then start cutting again. I think it's very, very important to get these good habits from the start. What you can see here now is that I've got 2 separate pieces. Ta-da! And now what I can do is I can fold them over individually to get my fold. I've got just enough. I think the bigger sizes you probably, depending on the width of your fabric, might not have, and you will need the whole meter, but you know, when you have it, then certainly you make use of it. Yeah, you don't want to waste ever any fabric. You never know what the rest could be good for, like a little top or a little frill or whatever. So I'm going to place this on, and then I can cut this one out as well. So I've cut out my facings. I can put this away, and I'm so glad that I've been really frugal because I've got quite a lot left for something else, maybe a bow or whatnot. I love that fabric. It's got a bit of stretch in it as well. It's really, really nice. So now I'm just going to quickly cut myself the hem trims. Okay, you probably only bought a little bit of extra fabric for your hem trim anyway, so you would have 20 centimeters here. Okay. So when you've got this situation that you need 2 folds, what you do is open out your fabric and then fold it to the middle or to wherever it needs to go to, so you can get out what you need. And then I've got 1 fold on this side, and then I've got another fold. I can turn this over here. Actually, I can go further over. You never know what you need all these little rests for. and I put this on here, and now I can cut my trim with 2 folds. So the one thing that you still need to do is you need to mark all your fronts. So what you want to do is snip the center fronts of your facings. Done both of them already actually, so snip here as well, snip the center front there, ta-da! Okay, so now we're ready to go. There's nothing in the way but to start sewing. The first thing to do is to close your shoulder seams on the shell fabric. I'm doing that a little bit different on the old Lily dress, but this is quite easy if you have a back opening. And then you do the same on the facings. If you have a very light fabric, I would recommend that you put iron-on interfacing on all the facings first. Now I've sewn the seam with a 1 centimeter seam allowance, ironed the seams apart, and now I can put on my facings with the right sides facing onto my dress. You need to pin this really well, all the way around the neckline and the armholes, which is what we are going to sew. And we're doing a 1 centimeter seam allowance, and once we've done those, we are going to cut back the seam allowance to 3 millimeters, and that way we don't have to snip into the curves. It makes it a bit quicker really, that's all. Now we're going to iron the seam up, just put your iron in there and push it up a bit. It makes it a lot easier when you've turned it to iron it again, and you don't have to fiddle quite so much. So just iron it all up. And then take a safety pin and put it through the end of your dress. I'm on the back here, and then you push that between the facing and the actual front and just push it through, and then you just pull it through to the other side. It's dead easy actually, but it only works if you have a center back seam, of course. And then I do the same on the other side, and I push that one through, and I pull this through. Next we're going to iron it so it's nice and flat like this, but of course when you go to the ironing board it'll be a little bit crumpled like this, so you need to take your time to work out all the curves really well. But it is easier because we pre-ironed this. You will see the difference when you start doing it. You just put your iron on and go, basically. The next step I actually forgot to do, so I had to do it later, so please don't take any notice that it's not overlocked. You need to overlock your facings first now, and then you determine the center front and put a pin there. And next we are going to put in the pleats. Put a pin there, and then you can put either your template on that I showed you at the beginning of the video, or you just mark it by pencil. That's also good, where the pleats are going to go. So we've got the center, and now I'm moving the right side pleat, the center and both sides, and then I turn over my pattern piece and I mark the other side as well. And for good measure, of course, you can do a ruler here and take them down a little bit more. If you have got checks, it's not that important because you can see where it goes down if you cut it all out straight, but I'm just doing that here. You could also, of course, use tailor's chalk or the invisible pen that disappears after a while. You can also do the pleats to the outside so they lie the other way around, which is also quite nice. So you can just experiment with that. Then pick up the center and the sides of the pleat, you know where they have to go. You've got 2 lines there on either side, so you need to move them so they're right on top of each other. Put a pin in there, and then you can mark from the top where you want to go. Now on this example I'm doing 2 centimeters from the top, but I think that's a bit high. You could go for 3 if you liked. So if you go down 3 centimeter instead of my 2 here, and then 2 down again, and in between those 2 pins we are going to stitch our pleat together so it springs open at the top. It also allows for more room to get the head through, which is quite easy. And then I do my outside pleat on that side, and again I mark where I want to stitch, And then I do it again on the third pleat. So again, you grab the center and then you put a pin in where your outside lines are, and then you divvy them up. Make sure that they are right on top of each other and adjust if you have to. And then the next step is to sew them in. Don't forget to lock in your stitches, beginning and end. And here I've sewn them. So they pop open to the back. If you put them in exactly the other way around from the front, of course, you get those 3 pleats on the front, which I think is also very nice. It just depends what you want to do, what effect you want to get. And then we open them out and we are now going to really press them very, very neatly so that all 3 are the same. And then of course that's where we're going to put our little flowers. So you can then turn it over and see where they need to go. On this dress I'm just using a single flower in a minute, and I'll show you how to make a shabby chic flower, so stay tuned. So here we could put 3 buttons or 3 flowers, or just a single flower like I'm doing. Now you can also check that you have put the pleats in right if you put your other facing on the seam here, on the side seam, and if that ends right on the center pleat, then that's right. What is very easy to go wrong is that those pleats gape to the front because you made the front too big, so that's a good way to check. Next we're going to close the side seams and the center back as well. So start from the facing and go all the way down. Just a little word of warning on this one, I wanted to keep it really easy. I have made the neckline bigger than the old Lily pattern so that you can get a head through, but I think it might still be a little bit tight on kiddies' heads, especially in the smaller sizes, so you want to check that please before you finish it all off. You can always lower the neckline if you say that doesn't look like it's going to go through. Then when you put your facings on, you can just sew a little bit lower around the back, and that will then sort that problem out. You could also do that on the front, but I think that'll be a bit complicated, so you can just do it on the back if you think it's not. If you wanted to find out how to do the fastening, then just watch the video with the short top where I show you the fastening with a rouleau loop. But I wanted to keep it quite easy here, so let's do these 3 seams so we can finish off our dress. And because this is video magic, ta-da! I've already sewn them, I have overlocked them, and now I'm going to press the seams towards the back. So that's always like how you do it, but to make sure that the facings are nice and flat, I snip it here and I fold the facing seam the opposite way to the actual dress seam, and then that's nice and flat. Now you can sew right in the seam shadow, or you can just attach it by hand. Just make sure that those facings can't move. On the little crop top I show you another version of how you can do this as well, which is a bit more professional, but we wanted to keep it really easy here, so just stitch those on so they can't go by hand or by machine in the seam. And now we are ready at the hem. Now we want to put together the hem trim first separately, so 1 centimeter seam allowance on either side, and then we're going to press that hem trim seam apart, both sides of course. We're going to turn in the top of our hem trim before we put on the trim. That makes it a lot easier. So now pick up the hem of your dress, and with the right side facing the wrong side, line up the side seams and the center back first and the center front, and we're going to sew this on with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. So pin it all the way around. And magic again, it's sewn already. But when you press this, sometimes the dress will roll out, and to avoid that, in this area here, we are going to take the seam allowance and we're going to understitch it. So fold the seam allowance into the dress and then stitch right on here, and that will give you a really nice edge. So you can see it here, so you only see it on the lining. We're not stitching through. And then we roll it up and you can see this little rim that you get, and that makes sure that the dress will never roll out. Now all I have to do is pin it to the top, and then I top stitch it all the way around. So now we've come to the end. Our dress is, for example, like this, is finished really. We've got here our decorating to be done, and you've got options here. So you could put on 3 little roses next to each other, like that. Let me just put them on here. And so you could put these little roses on there, and you can just click onto the next video now to see how the roses are made. I've also got a flower here, which the lovely Annika made for her wedding dress, and we've got some left over, so I could just put that on the middle. And actually I really like that on this one. I don't know what you think. Well, I think that's really nice, and I'm just going to sew this on, so I have got something different done and you can learn something different again. So let's sew this one on, and then I'm going to show you how to make it. Now we're going to do this beautiful shabby chic rose. So draw yourself some shapes, and then we're going to layer them up. You can cut them out of any satin you've got, any rest. You can do multicolor, you can do all sorts of things. I have so much silk stash that I just do it, and I really like silk because it frays a lot, and for a shabby chic flower that looks really good. You also need a strip of fabric. It's 5 inches long and it's 2 inches wide. Fold it in half and then just snip it, obviously not right to the middle because you'll be cutting through it. And then we're going to roll it up really, really tightly. My strip here is 10 inches. It was way too long, so 5 inches is fine. And then you just secure it at the end so it can't go anywhere. Now layer up your flower really nicely, so how you like it. You can see my flower is just really, really horrible. When the lovely Annika did it, she had much nicer shapes, and I'm sure you can come up with better shapes as well. Mine look really funny. And then I take my crocodile and I put a hole in, but whatever you've got to put a hole in the center, that'll be fine. And then I am going to put the center of my flower through that and secure it with needle and thread on the other side. And the way I'm doing that, by going through from side to side, I also give this flower a little bit more of a 3D shape, because at the moment it's really flat, and now it'll come out and poof up a little bit more. And then finally, the piece de la resistance are those little pearls, and I'm putting 3 pearls on. So just string them up and secure them, go through a few times and maybe over one of those pearls, and then it's basically ready to be sewn onto your dress. But of course you don't have to necessarily put a flower on like this. I think it's lovely. You could do the 3 rosettes. There's a separate video showing you that as well. And if you don't like any of that, you might want to put on a bow, and there's a separate pattern piece as well in the pattern for the bow. Here I've also put some chiffon underneath, which you can see, so that's quite... Here you can see a dress which is sewn all the way up to the top, and I've put 3 rosettes which come by the meter on top, which I think is great. And then I've put just something on the back there, did a normal hem and then put some rosettes on that. Here you can see the left hand side is sewn up and the right springs open, which I think is great. And if you are using stripy fabric, it gives you a most wonderful effect, because the lines, of course, through the twist really go like into an A line, which I think is beautiful. I've also used some shabby chic buttons on the front and the back with a little rouleaux loop, and that is all explained in the cropped top version. My favorite is this top, just with a little bit of lace on the bottom, sewn all the way up to the top, little ruler loop in the back and some rosettes, and perfect, you're finished. So I hope you enjoy making this top, and thank you very much for watching.